Hey everybody, it's Angie and welcome to Hot and Flashy. You guys, I am so psyched about today's video. I can't even tell you. I have a special guest here on my channel all the way from Houston, Texas. We are going to be talking to Dr. Barbie Taylor, also known as Menopause Taylor, here on YouTube. She is the author of a book on menopause. She has a podcast. She is a retired OBGYN. Apparently she was the OBGYN in Houston during her career. And now she's dedicated her retirement and her second half to educating women about menopause. She is the unbiased resource, and I like that. Her tagline is "Your menopause, your way, now and for the rest of your life." And I think that that is so important because not only does she arm you with the facts and the information, not just the sound bites that make it into the media, but the real facts. She digs deep on everything and digs out the information that you really need to know to make an educated decision. I polled my viewers on Instagram and YouTube last week asking for questions for Dr. Taylor, and oh my God, did it open up a Pandora's box of things. And basically what it illustrated to me is that as women, there's so much that we don't know. I think it's easier in some ways to just bury our head in the sand, or just to talk to our friends and find out what they did, or just take a soundbite off the radio and run with that. I feel like now that I've taken my head out of the sand, it's really important to get the information out there to more women. So that's what today's video is. So let me go ahead and bring in Dr. Taylor now. We are doing a Skype call because she is in Houston, I'm in Massachusetts, and hopefully it will answer all or at least most of your questions that you submitted on Instagram and YouTube. Hi, Dr. Taylor. It's so great to see you again. We have actually done a private consultation. Dr. Taylor offered me a consultation and I said, oh my God, yes, I could really use that. So we have spoken one time like this on Skype. We are here today mainly to answer your questions, my audience who asked them all. So let's get started. So the first question that I wanted to ask was just a real basic one about defining what menopause is. And I feel like, I know, as a postmenopausal woman, I should not be wondering like what is menopause, but I gotta say going into it, I had no idea. All I knew was that it was kind of the end of my baby making years, right? And that I would probably have hot flashes.
You know, I call it puberty in reverse. So you go through puberty, it's like the on switch to your reproductive life. And what happens? All these hormones start flooding into your body and you start having all this chaos in your life, right? Well, guess what? It happens again when you're about 50. It's like you're a geriatric teenager again, because that's the off switch. And when the off switch happens, it's puberty in reverse because all those hormones decrease and disappear. And it's the same kind of thing where you have a couple of years of chaos.
All right, so when you're going through that part where your hormones are going crazy, is that what's called perimenopause? Or is that, yeah, it is?
Your hormones disappear in stages. The first thing that disappears is your progesterone. And progesterone means hormone in support of pregnancy. Okay. So it's the one that was for the baby. It's not for you, it's for the baby. It disappears. And that's those years of crazy periods, wacky periods, heavy periods. The second one to disappear is your estrogen. That's when you have the hot flashes, the night sweats, the mood swings, the irritability, the depression. You know, your vagina starts burning. I mean, all the 22 symptoms of menopause. And then about 2 years after all that, you usually lose your testosterone.
Oh, wow. So that's the last to go.
Typically occur in stages, yeah. And that's why women have different symptoms at different times depending on where they are in the transition. By the time you're postmenopausal, your progesterone is pretty much gone. One kind of estrogen is gone. That's estradiol. That's the one we all want. Okay. Estradiol. It's the one that made you feel feminine and kept you all, you know, soft and your hair smooth and no hot flashes and all. Yeah. That one disappears. But we gain weight because that one disappears. And the fat cells produce a different kind of estrogen called estrone.
Oh.
But it doesn't do anything we want. It just makes us fat. Okay, so you don't have zero estrogen, but you have zero of the one you want. And then your adrenal glands continue to produce some testosterone, but not nearly as much as you used to have.
Okay.
So it's all relative. You know, nothing just totally, completely disappears, but it's not adequate. It's still a deficiency.
Well, that's good to know because, I mean, you already just expanded my mind about actually what menopause is. And I can't believe that I'm postmenopausal and I didn't even know about just which hormones end first, second, third.
But you're normal, Angie. You're normal. This is typical. This is why I have my channel, because women deserve to know this. You know, women have never had an education on menopause. It's never been out there. I've decided to use my YouTube channel like a classroom. I just teach you everything you need to know because I think you deserve to know it.
And I agree 100% that there's more that you need to know to make a decision. And so, you know, get yourself educated. And if it takes watching, 156 of Dr. Taylor's videos, then start today.
Watch them in order.
Watch one or two a day. I know, she wants you to watch them in order. I have to confess. I skip around a lot, and I'm reading your book and I listen to a few other podcasts, and you have a podcast as well. So there's just lots of different ways to get the information. I think it's becoming important for our generation to really bring this out into the light and talk about it publicly. And so that's why I'm so happy about your YouTube channel. And so I asked questions on Instagram and YouTube. So the one that got the most interest was, of course, about the symptoms. And mainly it was the lack of sleep, being tired all the time, hot flashes, and people wanted to know, like, when will it end, or will it ever end?
Well, first of all, no two women are alike. So women are not going to be the same with regard to when they experience any of these symptoms or how they experience these symptoms. So you have women who say, oh, I just feel fine, I've never had a symptom at all. That's okay, but it doesn't mean nothing is happening. Mm-hmm. And there are other women who are just completely miserable and can't get through their lives, and you realize it's a vicious cycle. If you have insomnia, you can't fall asleep. But when you do fall asleep, you have night sweats. Mm-hmm. The night sweats wake you up so you don't get any sleep. Right. You wake up and you're fatigued. Mm-hmm. When you're fatigued, you're forgetful. When you're forgetful, you're moody. The moodiness makes you feel depressed. The depression makes it so you can't sleep. It's a vicious cycle. Some women have it for a few years, mm-hmm. and then they kind of get better. Most people talk about menopause when they mean perimenopause. They mean the transition. The transition. Perimenopause is 2 to 10 years.
2 to 10 years.
When the symptoms go away, it doesn't mean that everything's back to normal. Mm-hmm. It means that the transition time, it's like puberty. You had symptoms during the transition.
Okay.
But it didn't mean that nothing else was ahead. Mm-hmm. And so what's really important is the fact that losing your estrogen puts you at risk for diseases that aren't as obvious as the symptoms. Mm-hmm. And if you're not aware of those, you could fail to do something to make sure that you avoid them.
Right.
If you lost your insulin or your thyroid hormone, you would have 20 symptoms that made you miserable, just like you do with menopause. Yep. And if you didn't take something for them, they would end up causing diseases that are life-threatening. Mm-hmm. And menopause is the same. But the truth about menopause is that we're not supposed to be living long enough to become menopausal. Other animals don't have menopause.
Right.
Because Mother Nature's plan is birth, reproduction, and death. So we are living twice as long as we were really intended with regard to the typical lifespan of an animal our size with our heart rate. So you're outliving your ovaries. Right. Is what's happening. We have prolonged our lives so that now we have to deal with the consequences of running out of something that your body depended on for many things. Mm-hmm. That's the way to look at it. It doesn't mean you have to take estrogen. It means that you have to compensate for your estrogen loss somehow.
Okay. So one of the questions I got, and this is just an example, but it was repeated over and over again. I'm 58, this wasn't my question, somebody else who's 58, have gone through menopause, but I'm still having symptoms, hot flashes, sleeplessness, and other symptoms affecting my sex health. Is it too late to start HRT? I probably didn't pick the right question here because there was somebody else who asked who was much older, like 70, and she was like, is it too late for me to start HRT? So can you talk about the window?
It's not about age. It's about how long has your body been unexposed to estrogen, whether it's your own or estrogen you took for replacement therapy. Okay, so the key is to understand that when you lose your estrogen and don't replace it, your body starts aging. Mm-hmm. Okay? Your arteries get hardening of the arteries. That's because estrogen kept those arteries nice and soft and supple, and without it, they start getting hard. You start losing bone. You start losing brain. Okay, so it's about the aging process. It depends on how much aging has occurred, because the longer you go without estrogen, the more your body ages. the more your body ages, the less it can tolerate reintroduction of estrogen. The estrogen window is the first 5 to 10 years off estrogen, whether that's because your ovaries stopped working or whether that's because you stopped taking HRT and now your window starts again. That's what that's about.
So there were a lot of people who wrote in who had a hysterectomy when they were younger. They're like, okay, so I had that out when I was younger. I'm now experiencing menopausal symptoms.
Yeah.
Is it too late for me to go on HRT?
If you had a hysterectomy with just your uterus removed ages ago and you still had your ovaries, the reason you didn't have any symptoms until recently was because they were working.
Okay, yep. That
when
makes
your
sense.
ovaries went out of business, you started having symptoms. Voila, that's the time when your estrogen window is beginning to open. That's where the clock starts ticking.
So if you were a younger woman and you also had your ovaries removed, then that puts you right into menopause, because there goes your ability to make any of the hormones that you need.
There goes the hormone factory.
And you would have symptoms right away. And now it's been 20 years, or 10, let's say 10 years, you're still having menopausal symptoms, but you haven't really had estrogen for that long. Then would it, in that case, would it be safe? Like,
it depends.
Hard to say.
It depends on the person.
Yeah.
It depends on, I have a real problem with women who are prematurely menopausal, who aren't put on estrogen, if they can take it. And here's why. Their aging process starts when they go through that
when they have the surgery.
Age 30 or whatever. They start losing bone then. They start losing brain then. Their risk for heart attack. Okay, so they have made the skyrocketing risks increase much sooner in their lives, unless they weren't able to replace it.
Right.
Okay, but if they can, they need to know how critical it's going to be for them, because they're going to start all this stuff 10, 20, 30 years earlier than the average woman.
So let's talk about bone density. I was shocked about how much bone you lose every year once you're postmenopausal, but that the medical community doesn't want you to get, or doesn't recommend, a bone density test until you're 65, is it?
Yes.
Well, if I'm going through menopause like the average woman at 50, 51, by the time I'm 65, I've lost...
You got it.
How much bone density?
25%.
25%.
You lose 2% of your bone every year in the first 5 years without estrogen.
Okay.
2% a year. So that's 10% right off the bat, the first 5 years.
Wow.
Then you lose at least 1% every year after that. So by the time you get to 65, you very well likely might have lost 25% of bone. But here's the problem. The guidelines are economic population guidelines for the whole population, and they are not for screening to see if you have osteoporosis. They are for treatment. Who gets treatment? As I tell everyone, you go get a bone density study and you pay for it. Because no, you're never going to find it early enough to do anything about it if you follow the guidelines. I teach you how to use this information to protect you, because the guidelines are all about money. You have a right to understand that before you break your hip.
And you are the only source that I have heard that from, of all the menopause stuff that I've looked at.
It upsets me so much. This kind of stuff upsets me so much. This is why I have the channel I do, because women can make such a difference in their lives, and they deserve the opportunity to do that. And there's nobody helping them.
Right.
Nobody's helping them. People are just scaring them.
Right.
And until women start demanding more, nothing's going to change. So I teach you so that you do what you need to do, and you know what you're doing. And when you've had a consultation with me, you're going to your doctor, and your doctor goes, "Are you in the medical profession?" They just can't believe.
Right.
They can't believe how much you know. And it's because I arm you with all this information that is so... It helps you save your life.
We had our consultation. You sent me my giant document with all my info. Got it right here.
Every time a woman gets that, they just go, "Oh my God!" But they use it forever. They just love it.
I'm not kidding you. I refer to this all the time because it's such an ongoing journey of like tweaking what's happening, or a question will come up that I won't have the answer to. I go right to this, or a friend will ask me like, "What are you doing about this?" And I'll be like, "Oh my gosh, well let me send you a page."
And what's good about it is it's all the information, the facts, but I weave into it all your particulars, because as you know, with a consultation, I send you an email that says, "Send me anything you want. Send me all your questions, your concerns, your fears, your labs, anything you want to cover. You can write volumes about yourself, and women do.
I wrote a book. I wrote a book. I included screenshots from my, health portal, and sent it over to you, Barbie. But everything that you sent back was really tailored to me and my experience, and how old I was when I started having my period, and how old I was when I stopped, and how many kids I had, and that's why you need a doctor to explain it, because us lay people, why would we know this stuff, really? And so all we know is what we've heard from our friends or our mothers or on the radio.
Right.
The other thing I didn't know is that most gynecologists get 1 hour of menopause education in medical school. And
that's it.
They don't go and get any special training about menopause, so they are just going on the basic guidelines that
That's right.
are for everyone, rather than looking at you as an individual. I mean, and your doctor will do that, but you get 10, 15 minutes with
10
them
minutes a
once
year.
a year.
Come on.
So my doctor just applied the basic information to me, which was that, okay, I'll put you on it because you're at higher risk for heart disease and osteoporosis than you are for breast cancer, but a lower dose, and I want you off it in 5 years, which if I had listened to her, I would be off already, and my dosage wouldn't have been enough to do anything about the heart disease or the osteoporosis.
Exactly. The estrogens that travel throughout your entire body will take care of all of your symptoms, and if you take the minimum necessary dosage to do so, they will prevent all the diseases that are associated with loss of estrogen, which include heart attack, osteoporosis, and Alzheimer's.
That's the minimum dose to do that.
The minimal necessary dosage for that.
Okay,
and
that's
with
different.
my consultations and all my teaching, I tell you what those are for each kind of estrogen. I will help you make sure you're on the minimal necessary dosage for those long-term benefits.
And I don't think women realize that estrogen has all these other beneficial things.
I know, they don't. They don't realize it. They think it's just for reproduction, and it's like, no. It's bathed every cell in your body and made all these things healthy, and now you're without it, and what are you going to do about that? I mean, you've got to find a way to maintain that health.
So let me move on to the next question, because this one was, really big. It was about belly fat and weight gain.
Oh, yeah.
And so the basic question is, I'm just going to read it here, why does menopause make it so difficult to lose weight, especially around the belly and hips? It seems to be an area that won't budge.
With menopause, you have a change in your metabolism. So it slows way down, and you start packing on fat in places that you never did before. But you did the same thing at puberty. Think about it. You were a string bean, and you grew hips and boobs. Your body fat distribution changed then too. Well, it does it again at menopause, but we don't like it this time, because most women gain weight around their belly area. Now, the problem with that is that's what puts you at risk for heart attack.
Is it just a function of middle age as well?
It's mostly due to estrogen loss.
Estrogen? Okay.
It's mostly due to estrogen. And women who take estrogen will, if you line them all up, they'd say, well, I didn't gain that much. But women who don't take estrogen will put on a lot of weight, and then even if they start it, they will have trouble losing.
So someone wrote in and said, what can I do about this weight gain besides going on a starvation diet or, doing some crazy fad diet? Is the only answer take estrogen? No.
There's no magic answer. There's many ways to go about it, but the biggest thing is to adjust your expectation, because you aren't going to lose it quickly like you used to. I don't advocate dieting. Anything that is temporary is going to end up failing, because you're going to go back to your old habits. So if you lose weight on a temporary basis, it's probably not going to serve you very well. So my attitude is, try to adopt a different diet, lifestyle, whatever you will, that you can maintain permanently. It's a great time in your life to wake up and go, I'm going to start taking care of myself, and really, really do it, because you've spent the last 30 years taking care of everybody else.
That's true.
And now it's your turn. And this is one of the ways your body gets your attention, by letting you know that you can't get away with what you used to get away with. And part of the problem with weight gain is the lack of sleep, because when you don't get sleep, your body goes into stress mode and packs on more weight. So again, that vicious cycle comes into play. Yeah. They're all connected.
I also heard about sugar cravings being connected to menopause.
Yes, and alcohol cravings.
Oh.
Women crave alcohol like crazy at menopause, but they don't talk about it. What I tell women is, look, you get to choose what you're willing to forfeit, and you get to choose what you don't want to forfeit. Really, in many ways, you have more control at menopause than you ever had before. You can control your hormones. You can make choices that you never could before. There are women who learn from me that, that one glass of red wine that helps prevent a heart attack is not good for your bones because it kind of increases your risk for osteoporosis a little bit, and it increases your risk for breast cancer a whole lot. That same one glass of red wine a day does different things for your risks for different diseases. And, I've had women in my seminars who go, but I'm not willing to give my red wine. And I go, good for you. You don't have to. You can make that modification somewhere else. You can choose something else to make that work for you.
I think that's such an interesting point about the wine having a connection to breast cancer, because I feel like we're all running around with our hair on fire about estrogen causing breast cancer, yet we're all getting together every weekend drinking our wine and having no idea that increases your risk for breast cancer. That was one of the big questions that people asked were, what is the real link between taking hormone replacement therapy and getting breast cancer? Because, as you know, I think all women are afraid of breast cancer.
Sure.
But I'm on HRT because I talked to my doctor about the risks. And so since I don't have a history of breast cancer in my family, but I do have a huge history of heart disease, osteoporosis, and Alzheimer's, she thought it would be more beneficial for me to be on it than not be on it. So, but I know all the breast cancer people who, they write in every time I do a menopause video. I was on HRT for 2 months, got breast cancer. My mother was on it for 2 years.
No cancer can develop overnight like that. Every cancer that's ever diagnosed has been there for years. That's how cancer behaves. It starts out as one cell that goes crazy. It takes years to become something you could diagnose, all of them. So there's no possibility for someone to have breast cancer after a couple of months of anything. I mean, it just doesn't work that way.
What about those estrogen-fed breast cancers? Well,
that's estrogen-dependent breast cancer. Okay, and that has to be a kind of cell that is the one that went crazy that becomes a cancer for estrogen to be pertinent at all. There are others for which the opposite is true.
Okay.
Estrogen reduces them. And that's the case with all cancers. Have different things that make them grow faster or slower. But breast cancer is associated with the number of cycles you have in your lifetime. It's the number of menstrual cycles. What causes breast cancer is the up and down of estrogen and progesterone. And the women who have had the fewest cycles have the lowest risk of breast cancer. And the women who have had the fewest cycles are the women who have had the most pregnancies. And pregnancy gives you the highest levels of estrogen. So it makes you stop and think, well, wait a minute, how can we say that estrogen causes breast cancer? What about progesterone? Well, the studies, all of them show that women who take progesterone and estrogen have higher rates of breast cancer than women who take estrogen alone.
Okay.
So it's funny how estrogen has become the demonized hormone for this, when in fact it's really progesterone that is the link to breast cancer. But women aren't getting that information, and they've got it backward, and they're afraid of the wrong one.
Yes.
And so I just give facts. I want people to know the truth so they can make decisions that really will work for them, as opposed to having misinformation and fear.
Right.
And we live in a world of sound bites, and people have fear, and fear is the strongest emotion on the planet. You scare someone and they will be paralyzed. And I try to erase that. I want to give people peace of mind. I want you to have information. I want you to be confident in being able to make choices that you know are based on fact. And then you can still do anything you want to do, but you'll know what you're doing.
I am taking both estrogen and progesterone because I do still have my uterus, and so the progesterone is increasing my breast cancer risk a little bit. I don't feel like it's exponentially, but
no, nothing's exponential.
Right, and I feel like that's kind of part of the misinformation that we get from the media is, oh my God, your chances are 200 times more you're going to get breast cancer if you do this. But nobody talks about wine being a risk factor, and I feel like so many women are not willing to give up their wine.
I always talk about trade-offs because every single option for managing your menopause has some pros and some cons. Right. Every single one of them. They're all going to have things that are good and not so great. And the whole idea is for you to know what those limitations and trade-offs are and tailor them to you so that you do what's right for you. And no one else's opinion matters.
Right.
And my goal is to help you do it any way you want. I just want to make sure you're looking at the big picture of how much each thing can accomplish and how much it cannot accomplish. And as long as you're happy with it, I'm going to help you do it.
You know, it's so refreshing because it's not really what you get from a lot of people that are out there. They are trying to sell you something, or they want you to do it one way. But there are so many different ways, and that's what I love most about your channel is that you show all the ways. If you're a person who likes pharmaceutical, big box stuff, you're talking about that. If you're someone who wants to go the custom route, bioidentical all the way, then you're talking about that. If you don't want to use any hormones, you want to just use all natural stuff, you are giving people information and guidance about that.
Absolutely.
So I love that. So I didn't want the people who were concerned about breast cancer to think that we're like pushing HRT.
No. I don't push anything.
Right.
I
don't either.
I don't care how you manage your menopause.
Exactly.
I just want you to be happy with what you do now and later, and I want you to be sure of what you're doing. I don't want you to look back 20 years from now and say, why didn't anyone tell me? That is what I am trying to erase. That feeling of, I didn't know.
Right. So what about all the women who wrote in who just read the new study that came out in the UK that suggested that HRT is twice as likely to cause breast cancer as initially thought? So you want to know if you were aware of this study?
Oh, of course I'm aware, and it's nothing new. To those of us in the medical community, it's another study along the same lines as the WHI with a lot of the same flaws. It's always a balance of what does the data show and how did they do the study and what pieces of it are pertinent to you and which ones aren't. So this one is not any reason to say, okay, now we're sure. No, we're not in a position to say, now we know it's problematic. No, but it hasn't changed the basic information. The basic information is still, it's about cycles.
Yeah. So even HRT, whether it's just estrogen plus progesterone, everything is about the benefits and the risks and weighing those with your personal family history.
Absolutely. And then again, there's herbs, there's vitamins, there's minerals, there's so many different things, all of which have benefits, risks, and limitations, all of them. So it's not like you have to use estrogen. There's many choices. It's just know how much each thing can do.
Right.
Know what it's left undone, and then find ways to cover those bases. That's really what it's about.
Right. Well, I think that's one of the interesting things about the heart disease is that it's one of the things where you can take estrogen and it will help you, but if you don't or can't, you can control your risk of heart disease with so much more with lifestyle.
So many things.
The statistics about how many women die from heart disease
compared to breast cancer. People are worried about the wrong thing. 1 out of 2 women over the age of menopause dies from heart attack. 1 out of 2.
1 out of 2.
But 1 out of 29 dies from breast cancer. So most of us should be running around worrying about heart attack and doing everything we can to prevent a heart attack.
Could you just talk for a second about what the actual data from the WHI was versus what was in the media?
So let's take one example from the WHI. What you heard from the media was that HRT increases your risk of blood clots by 100%. Well, here are the exact numbers. They studied 10,000 women, which is a good number, but the average age of those women was 63. Now, that's not the age that women typically start HRT. They're usually 50. Half of those women had all kinds of health problems, like hypertension and diabetes also, which is also not the case for most women when they start HRT at 50. So of the 10,000 women who did not take HRT, 8 had a blood clot. And on HRT, 16 had a blood clot. That is a 100% increase.
Yeah, because a 100% increase sounds like everybody got a blood clot.
Exactly.
Right? And their life was threatened.
The women think, okay, that means everyone's going to die. No.
But when you think 16 out of 10,000, then what's, the actual relative risk is very small.
It's small. And again, they studied a group of women who aren't the typical women who would be starting HRT. It really wasn't a very valid study at all, but look what it has done to women and their health. Probably for multiple generations.
Right, yeah. But there's other, say, diseases of old age or diseases of being postmenopausal that estrogen is really the only thing that will help.
The big ticket item, exactly. Like Alzheimer's. It's with Alzheimer's, the biggest thing is estrogen, period. But But the second biggest thing is what people don't want to hear. And that is, you have to challenge your brain with the stuff you hate. That is the stuff we don't do as adults.
And so with osteoporosis, though, estrogen is one of the main things that can help with that. But there are also, I learned from you, these drugs called SERMs.
There's a bunch of different ones, and some have multiple drugs within the category. There's a big smorgasbord of just SERMs that women should know about, just in case they prefer that.
Yeah, and that's, so much of what I've learned from you is that there are so many options. So, if you don't want to take estrogen, you can't take estrogen. You need to know, like, what it can really help you with, what there are other options for that can help you. Like, we all go around thinking it's HRT or no HRT and that's it. But there are so many other options.
No.
Okay, can you talk about the difference between bioidentical and, say, synthetic? I think the general thinking is that bioidentical is 100% safe and synthetic manufactured hormones are not. And I think what I've learned is that they're kind of the same as far as risk factors.
It has nothing to do with safety. Nothing at all to do with safety. And the truth of the matter is, people don't really understand the word of the meaning bioidentical. They confuse the word bioidentical for the word compounded.
Right.
And so women think that if they get their hormones from a compounding pharmacy, they're bioidentical. And then they think anything not from a compounding pharmacy is synthetic. That's all wrong. That's completely wrong. Bioidentical just means it's made with molecules that are similar to the ones in your body, but it has nothing to do with whether they're compounded or pharmaceutical. And in fact, 90% of the pharmaceutical estrogens are 100% bioidentical. So if you want bioidentical, you want bioidentical, but that doesn't mean you prefer pharmaceutical versus compounded. Now, you may prefer one or the other, but you need to say that because you haven't said it yet if you just say bioidentical. So you have to know these differences. And then it empowers you to make sure that you've gotten the right thing. And so that's the key. But there's nothing about safety. And in fact, it's kind of the opposite, because the pharmaceutical bioidentical hormones are researched and tested and guaranteed for reliability and consistency. Compounded hormones are not. There's no regulatory standards at all. There's no regulation of them. So again, it's kind of like the drug world versus the vitamin mineral supplement world. And it's not that one's right or wrong, good or bad, better or worse. It's that you need to know the differences, and it depends on what you're trying to accomplish.
I was not happy the first time I went to talk to my doctor about HRT, and she offered me antidepressants. And this was a question that came up over and over again in Instagram and YouTube, is why do they offer us antidepressants? Are antidepressants actually helpful for symptoms, or do they just think that we're all depressed because we're menopausal?
Think about it this way. If you have one thing that causes 22 symptoms, you have a choice. You can replace the one thing that causes all the symptoms, or you can target each symptom individually. Antidepressants target one symptom. Depression. It's one of the 22 symptoms. It's your choice to do it that way if you want. But for a physician to offer you that instead of telling you, here's what's going on, it's estrogen deficiency, would you prefer estrogen or antidepressants and a sleeping pill and something for you, that should be your choice. But no one takes the time to do that. They're handing you antidepressants. That's wrong. You have to understand that when the WHI came out and the public became very fearful of estrogen, women were telling each other that estrogen or that HRT would kill them, and that if your doctor gives it to you, your doctor's trying to kill you. This was the kind of conversation women were having between themselves.
Me, definitely.
Well, doctors realized that that's what was happening, and they reacted to that by saying, we'll find ways not to give it to them because we don't want to be in the line of fire. But they're not going to take the risk. So until women stop demonizing this, physicians will probably find ways not to give it to them. If women don't demand more, they will never get more. That is why I teach you, because I feel like we have got to change this ourselves. We've got to demand more. We've got to learn more. You can still do everything your way, but to treat something like it's bad and make everyone feel like they shouldn't be doing it, that's a problem. And that's going to change its availability.
Because it's not
and
bad across the board.
But that's what's happening. And it's same with sleeping pills, and same with a lot of the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
You know, lubricants for your vagina, when in fact your vagina is shrinking.
Right.
And you want to avoid it shrinking, but a lubricant's not going to do that. It's only going to make it possible to have intercourse. I always bring up the vagina.
Of course. Well, this was a huge topic. I think, you know, and a lot of people don't want to mention it, you know, but a lot of people did mention it, so let's talk about it. So I think the main question about it was about whether to use a local estrogen versus a circulating through your body estrogen.
Your vagina is the most selfish part of your body when it comes to estrogen. And even if all of your other symptoms are gone, and even if you are on that necessary dosage to prevent diseases, your vagina may still say, I want more, I want more. Okay, so that is why they make all these local estrogens that go in your vagina and stay in your vagina. They do not travel through your body.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I teach women that they don't know is that they have no risks at all. Zero. In fact, for 5 years now, the North American Menopause Society has been trying to get the FDA to get rid of that encyclopedia of scary warnings.
Yeah.
Because those products don't have any risks at all.
What is
And
that
it's been
called?
proven they have none. But the FDA calls them hormones, and they have what they call class labels.
That's it,
They have
class
class
labeling.
labeling
Yep.
and class warnings. And because they're hormones, they say, no, every hormone gets the same warnings, and they put them in there. So you go to your doctor, and your doctor says, you can use this in your vagina, it has no risk, don't worry. And you go, okay, and you get home, and you see that great big thing, and it scares you to death, and you won't use it.
Mm-hmm.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible. So it has no risk. You can use that stuff in your vagina all you want. It causes no problems of any kind anywhere, but it does prevent your vagina from shrinking. And that is what is happening when you have that itching, burning, irritation. It's not just itching and burning. It is shrinking. You're losing an organ.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need to lose it. You shouldn't be losing an organ.
No.
Okay? So estrogen is the thing that will prevent that shrinkage. Now, lubricant is really more for your partner because it's only for intercourse.
Yep.
It's not going to preserve your vagina. It's just going to allow you to have intercourse.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's the kind of teaching. I make sure you understand the difference. These are not two things that are created equally.
Mm-hmm.
These are different purposes.
One of the most popular questions was about hair loss.
I know.
My hair sheds so much, and now I have half the hair volume. Someone
Yes.
asked, is there a test to find out what exactly you need to replace? Is there a special kind of medical doctor to look for what manages hormone replacement? And okay, they want to know about sleeplessness. This is a run-on question, lack of energy. All right, so let's just talk about hair loss as menopause affects it.
Yes. Hair is, I get that too. Tons of hair questions. Okay, here's the thing about hair. First of all,
We
your
love
hair
our
has-
hair, don't we? We love our hair.
people care about their hair. I mean, they just do. Your hair has 3 phases.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, you have some hairs that are growing, some hairs that are just hanging out resting, and some hairs that are falling out. But because you have hair in all 3 phases, you don't really notice much change. Hormonal changes can synchronize hairs. And what happens is all the hairs will do one thing. So that's why the pregnant woman will say, oh, my hair grew so much, it got so thick.
Mm-hmm.
Because all the hairs went into the growth phase and fewer in the falling out and resting phase.
Okay.
And menopause can do the same thing. Unfortunately, the opposite is true. With menopause, more go into the falling out phase. And then you have to add to that the fact that at menopause, you also have a decrease in your testosterone, which decreases your hair. Why do men go bald? You know,
Okay.
Same thing. And your hair gets more brittle because it's drier. Estrogen was like a great big oil can for your body, for your skin, for your vagina, for your joints, for your hair, for your eyes. I go on and on.
Yep.
Your hair gets really dry. When it gets dry, it's more fragile. It starts breaking.
Okay.
It starts falling out. So you have all these things that happen at the same time. Boom. And stress will make your hair fall out. And most women at the time of menopause, they're sandwiched between elderly parents and children, and they the stress is enormous for a lot of women. So you add all that together, and your hair falls out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so there's no magic bullet.
Okay.
But the magic component in any vitamin, mineral supplement is biotin.
Mm-hmm.
Biotin is the hair thing.
Yep.
But then there's also Rogaine, which is
Yep.
actually a blood pressure medicine turned topical for hair growth.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter of knowing what's going to make it fall out and realizing that it's probably never going to be as thick again. Estrogen loss is associated with hair loss.
Right, okay.
And so taking HRT will make the problem much less prominent.
Yeah.
But again, that's not for everybody.
Right, right.
Don't you feel empowered by knowing this and feeling like you now can you have a toolkit of options and ways of doing things that you can call on, you can utilize whenever you need it.
That's why I'm so happy that we're able to do this today.
Oh, Angie, I thank you so much because, I love helping women and I want to reach as many as I can, and I wish every woman got this education in her 20s or 30s and was prepared and knew exactly what was going on when it happens, and didn't have this waste of time and misery and breaking down of relationships and everything that goes with not knowing what's going on. I wish that all women would get this education, and I just love any opportunity to give it to them. And so I thank you so much for making this possible and exposing your audience to this, because I hope that it helps some of them.
Yeah, I think it will. I know a lot of my viewers already watch your videos. They already love you. Some of them have had consultations. They have your book. Yep. They are singing your praises. When I mentioned that I was doing this, they were like, yes! I'm so happy you're having her on. So thank you so much for your time today. And so remember, everybody, Dr. Taylor's YouTube channel is called Menopause Taylor. You can find her there. The link will be in the information box below the video. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Angie. Take care and enjoy, everybody.
You too.